This is my idea for Classic Plus. It is horizontal broad strokes for the purpose of shifting from vertical to horizontal with some longevity. It's a dumb idea and it creates some problems that I think the devs can handle and address properly. Still, I fully expect it to be ruthlessly torn apart in the comments. The current model is linear, recently relabeled more accurately as vertical, and it is unsustainable. It has a definitive end of being fully BIS, but the entire driving factor is attaining player power. It literally just boils down to DPS go burr and numbers get bigger. The need for gear drives the player base to do the necessary actions to get that gear. And this is where the shift needs to happen. There is no longer a definitive best in slot list, and instead a BIS for this particular encounter. Let's look at this from a diagram perspective. The current linear progression of player power is on the vertical axis. The player base gains power by leveling to 60, then doing the pre-BIS grind, then raid logging for powerful epics until your character is fully BISed out. There is a notable disdain for raid logging, and recently I've heard a lot of love for the pre-BIS grind, with people pointing out that it is the most fun part, which makes me think that it's a good part to emulate and try to recreate in other ways. So what do we label the horizontal axis, and what is in the new space created on the horizontal diagram? I'm going to call it anything other than raw stats and still has some kind of value. Anything other than power that still has value. And with that categorical label in place, there is and always has been some gear occupying this new area. Cosmetics. It's really not powerful, but it looks cool, and players can make their characters look like Stormwind guards or roleplay with themes. It's the predecessor to transmogs, if you will. Secondly, resist sets. Not widely used, not widely viable, but occasionally, for specific encounters, they are necessary and thus have value without granting more power to the player. Current in-game examples would include fire resist sets for MC and BWL, even if that's mostly tanks. Frost resist for Saffron in Nax. And then things like, I don't know, the Onyxia Scale Cloak for Nef. Each of these encounters shifts the concept of best in slot away from the status quo of making number go bigger to something else entirely. It's best in slot for this encounter. So what would Classic Plus add that fills this current void? Again, pre-BIS grind being the most fun part and thus something to try to replicate. I propose this space be filled with gear that has set bonuses but little to no stats, to be mixed in with the rest of your standard DPS gear, not replace it entirely, but still breaking up what is considered the current BIS. Set bonuses like extra melee swings, powerful chance on hit procs, extra spell cast or reduced swing and cast times, maybe reduced resource costs for specific abilities. This area could also be filled with gear that grants new abilities but little to no stats, sort of how abilities were added to Season of Discovery but hard locked to the piece of gear and not swappable like they were in SOD. Also, like SOD had this idea, I guess it was inevitable. It was inevitably going to be swamped with abilities from future expansions. It is what it is. To look at this vertical problem from a different angle, let's label the vertical axis with encounter difficulty. BWL is harder than MC, and Nax is harder than BWL, so on and so forth. The difficulty progresses linearly. So what would the horizontal axis be labeled? How about difficult in a way that isn't overcome just by doing more damage? And hey, let's also try to recreate that pre-BIS grind a little bit. Obviously, Classic Plus will have new content. And quest chains are a no brainer. I think quest content should be difficult to impossible to do with whatever the current BIS gear is at the time. It should present a problem that is solved with non BIS gear. Again, these are broad strokes. Devs can work out the details. Existing content can be added to. Same old max level dungeons, but with secret chambers, new end bosses, and quest items added in. This also adds longevity by bringing BISed out players back to old content and potentially grouping with players on the pre-BIS grind, or people gearing up their alts. So what would Blizzard devs add to this empty space? Well, obviously new dungeons, but specifically adding a difficulty that can't be overcome by pew-pewing harder. And I'm not talking about copy and pasting mechanics from retail because that wouldn't work anyway. Retail mechanics are by and large movement and mobility challenges, like don't stand in the moving, growing, bad stuff on the ground. I mean, new mechanics that require the set bonuses that have been added with the horizontal content. Shift the concept away, shift the concept of BIS towards BIS for this encounter. And that gear could come from the aforementioned quests and old dungeons that have been expanded upon. And what would these new dungeons reward? They would reward players with the necessary gear, like abilities and no stats, to overcome the new mechanics in the new raids. And let's not forget the okayest part that will be added to Classic Plus. The okayest part. Alright, let's look at it this way. The new long quest chains and new content added to the old max level dungeons would reward the gear necessary to counter the mechanics of the new dungeons. The new dungeons would reward gear that is necessary to counter the mechanics of the new raids. The new raids would reward gear that is versatile and useful beyond just doing more damage and making numbers go big. And does this look kind of familiar? Again, these are really rough ideas, super broad strokes. The idea that I've simply drawn out there, right here, would in practice look closer to the TBC attunement chart, like times 10. This is just the simplified version of it, but I think it would look more like that. If we look at the timeline of content release, you gotta wonder where this Classic Plus content would fit. Would it be breadcrumbed out in the patches between the established major events, or added after the OG storyline has taken place? Should some of these sets with the set bonuses and no stats be added to lower level dungeons and quests? Should some of the gear with the abilities but no stats be sprinkled in and amongst all the raid tiers? I think some of it should, just to start the process of shifting away from BIS to BIS for this encounter. Expand the tool set, don't just make the existing tool set stronger. Okay, let's talk about the issues that this crazy ass idea creates. I know you've all been thinking this is so dumb, my bags will always be full of gear. A separate inventory space for gear sets is pretty much a must to keep your main inventory from being completely filled with gear pieces. Something that mimics the add-on GearQuipper in looks and usage, but the pieces of gear don't take up spots in your bags. This separate inventory could still be dragged and dropped to and from your standard inventory. Let's just say, hypothetically, when a character hits 60, they get 3 spaces for each gear slot. 3 helm slots, 3 necklace slots, etc. Future slots could be unlocked by achievements and accomplishments of the new Classic Plus content, quest chains, dungeon, raid, and potentially, I don't know, gold sync. All of this gear will require a truckload of enchantments. Yep, all I can say is yeah. This creates 6 or 7 pre-BIS and BIS sets. That's going to take a lot of time to collect all that. And Yeah, well, the pre-bis grind is the best part, and that's what I think this idea will replicate. It has a definitive end. Not necessarily, as long as the encounter mechanics of the new bosses requires something other than zug zug harder and make the new gear the solution to those encounters, they are only limited by their imagination. And that's the end of my insane rambling. Thanks for lending me your ear. Let me know who is going to hate my idea more, Soda or Ompy.